My name is Glenn Jones, and it's my great pleasure to be the Dean of the Ontario Institute for Studies and Education of the University of Toronto, and to say a few words of welcome. Welcome to all of you to this wonderful celebration of Dave Hunt's enormous life and accomplishments. And thank you so much to Jan for joining us and for being part of this conversation. You're going to hear an awful lot about Dave, and I don't want to spend a lot of time because I think my notion is to sort of start things off, but I do want to say a couple of things. First, perhaps the most obvious is Dave was simply a star scholar. I mean, this is an individual who was world-renowned, whose impact on his field was absolutely outstanding. But what I think I understand about Dave in terms of his strengths and what so many others have told me is about just the strength of his character and his role in terms of supporting and being collegial and helping and mentoring so many people around this place. I don't know how many people I have bumped into over the years, but certainly over the last few months, who said, you know, he was my mentor. I'm not sure that they know each other, but there's this wonderful sense that he supported so many people and had such a large impact on so many people's lives through that character and that supportive personality that was so much a part of him. Part of that came through, of course, in his work in graduate studies. And a lot of people in this room I've talked to already today told me about the fact that he was on their committee and he was their supervisor. When he retired from OISE, of course, the department that used to be called Adult Education and Counseling Psychology voted to create the Dave Hunt Award for teaching, for graduate supervision of teaching. And about within that year, I think, OISE decided to create its first award, and the question is, what would we name it? And the most obvious decision, and perhaps the easiest decision for anybody to make, was to call it the Dave Hunt Award for Graduate Education. And not only did that go through, I should point out that our faculty council, which almost never does anything unanimously, made it a unanimous decision. Because everybody agreed we couldn't think of a better individual to name an award after in the context of graduate supervision and helping somebody through than Dave Hunt. So I want to thank Jan for sharing Dave with us for so many, many years, long beyond the time of normal retirement. We all feel a tremendous sense of sorrow, but we know it's nothing compared to yours. And I just want to say thank you for sharing him with us, because it meant so much to so many people in this room. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Charles.
Okay. Thanks so much, Glenn. And yeah, he mentored me before I knew him. I was a graduate student. That's possible. I was a graduate student at the University of Michigan, and my entire thesis was informed by his matching model research. That's when Dave was quantitative, and of course we know that he went through a period of transformation. Arjun's laughing. I mean, it's quite astounding to see somebody go from what he was doing in those days to a time when I was being ousted from this place, going to another job in Eastern Ontario, and the great band that you'll hear from, you know, greater than ever, but not the same as ever. You know, they were playing, and I got a nice statue from Hugh Oliver, who's no longer with us, who must have written some words for the band, some of which could be heard by people, you know, over 18. So you know Hugh. And Dave gave me a book by Prokop on journaling, and said, you're going to go away and you're going to come back to the academy, and you should be a reflective practitioner. And I had never kept a diary about the leader I aspired to be. And so he's had a huge impact on so many, myself included. So we've got a really interesting gathering of folks and stories about this person who was all about the beacon of humankind and friendship. And we're going to start off with three people who were influenced by Dave, who worked very closely with Dave, and we're going to start with our own, our very own Mary Beatty to start things off, right?
Thank you, Charles, and thank you to everybody who has come out to celebrate Dave and to be here for Jen and family. Thank you so very much. It's lovely to see all these faces because Dave brought us together. I see people that I wouldn't know if it hadn't been for Dave. So, it's a very special honor for me to be here, to pay tribute to a man who was a remarkable person. He was a brilliant teacher and scholar, a mentor and friend. If you were lucky enough to be Dave's friend, you knew how lucky you were. We shared many interests: music, love of nature, love of a good laugh, and love of life. Dave was an inspiration to so many of us here at OISE. I met him first when I was a graduate student in the mid-80s. I was told about his teaching. I went to his department and enrolled in his class and took several classes from him. Dave was a true lifelong learner. He was a brilliant teacher, but he was also a brilliant learner. He had a wisdom that drew on his years of experience and on his extraordinary abilities to learn from direct experience and the big and small things in life itself. Dave knew how to be a friend to his students and his colleagues, and to the many people he stayed connected to right to the end. He taught by example how to be a friend. Once a week, he would phone me and the other people he stayed connected to and say, "How's it going? How are your students this term? What about that book? When is it going to be finished? Are you able to get out walking in this weather?" Dave's last book, How to Be a Friend, is a small book filled with practical and profound insights into the nature of friendship in our lives, and also into how we can create authentic and mutually beneficial relationships in our professional and research lives. As you all know, Dave had a stellar career. Glenn mentioned it. His significance as a researcher and scholar was recognized nationally at OISE and also by the Canadian Education Award for Distinguished Contribution to Education. Dave was also awarded an honorary doctorate by the University of Helsinki, and he was very proud of that. As well as establishing an award when he retired, we also gave him a great party at the faculty club. Marilyn Lakin, Ardra, Sheila Cook, and myself, we organized a great party. As the song says, love was in the air. You could see it and you could feel it. Dave had a quick wit and a great sense of humor. Sometimes he would say something and then he would follow it with, "I know you won't repeat that." Well, no, Dave, I won't repeat it, but I do find myself repeating quite a lot of things he said. And when I do, I can hear his voice. Begin with yourself in all things, not in abstractions. Learn how to learn from your direct experience. Know that you always have choices. You can choose to act in one way or in another way. Learn to know the difference. Speak from the heart, listen from the heart, and act from the heart. And then Dave would say, love the questions. I have a very fond memory of being a graduate student in Dave's class, and he read us the Rilke poem, Love the Questions. The poet speaks about the beauty of questions and about the art of embracing them and living them throughout our lives. Now, I'm a person who has always been plagued by too many questions, and sometimes I've been criticized for this. So, I remember thinking back then, love the questions? I like this. I'm in the right place here. Now, Fast forward more than 30 years to 2 weeks ago, when I met my current class of students and I read them the poem, Love the Questions. The poet says, stop chasing after fast answers that you wouldn't understand even if they were given to you, because you couldn't live them. And the point is to live the questions and live your way into the answers. I told the students that I had been introduced to that poem by one of the best teachers I've ever had, and I have had some great teachers. At the end of the class, a shy student said how much she'd liked that poem, and it had helped her. So I said, say more. And she, Christina, explained that she was in the first year of her PhD program. In the first week, she had felt overwhelmed by so many questions. I felt lost and confused, she said. I was exhausted and afraid. Now, I feel as if I was meant to be here, to hear those words. I feel reassured. Now, I miss Dave most when I can't tell him that story, because he would have liked that. He would have liked the flashback. He would have liked the continuity. He's in our teaching, in our research. He's in our hearts and in our minds. And I miss him too when I'm reading what he said to me in conversations and interviews over the course of 5 years. Dave agreed to be a participant in my research project on lifelong learning. And I learned a lot about how he learned from ordinary, everyday experiences and interactions. How he learned from music, from playing in band, the foolish things, and how he learned from his daily meditation, mindfulness practice. Dave could see the parallels between trading fours in jazz and the creation of research and teaching relationships for authentic dialogue and shared meaning making. He would say, it's all about being tuned in to the other person, all about the to and fro, and about making something together. Dave had an extraordinary ability to help someone to tune into themselves and into their own understandings, to what he would call their experienced knowledge. He was a wonderful listener, and when he responded, he drew from a deep well of wisdom. Now, Dave tuned into his own inner life through his daily mindfulness practice that he called Greet the Day. Each morning, he went out onto his balcony, winter or summer, to meditate for 20 minutes. He explained it to me, and these are his own words. I would sit on the lounge chair and open myself to the day, greeting the day as it came in, noticing things with all my senses. The light breaking in the east, the clouds in the sky, the bird song, the sounds of the city. Then I would say to myself, this is the only Wednesday, September the 25th, 2019 that we will ever have. It will never come again. How can I make the best of this day? What does the day bring to me? What do I bring to the day? Throughout this day, how will I connect my actions to my inner values and beliefs and to my long-term purposes and goals? Then I choose a quality that I'm going to work on that day. Attentiveness, maybe, acceptance, patience, kindness, and so on. End of quote. Dave explained that his learning from this exercise was a gradual process that he had developed over many, many years. He acknowledged that he wasn't always successful at his efforts to live the quality he had chosen, especially when he was under duress. However, he explained that the exercise itself was very valuable to him because, whether he was successful or not, the efforts themselves led him to understand his values and beliefs more clearly, and they always revealed new possibilities. The mindfulness exercise allowed Dave to be intentional about how he was living his life. It allowed him to connect the actions of each day to the arc of his whole life. There's a line for that, and I shared it with Dave one time. It's from the poet Seamus Heaney, who explained that the purpose of life is to be here for good in every sense of the word. The book from this research project with 8 participants will be dedicated to Dave. I feel such gratitude to this generous man who gave so much of himself to others. He had an unlimited supply of love to give to all of us. In the dedication, I will use his own words. Speak from the heart, listen from the heart, and act from the heart. In conclusion, I will give you a few lines from the poem Farewell, My Friends by Tagore. Farewell, my friends, shed no tears, for I need them not. All I need is your smile. If you feel sad, do think of me, for that's what I will like. When you live in the hearts of those you love, remember then, you never die. Thank you.
In conclusion, I mean, no, there's more, but you know, Mary has just set the stage for the recurring theme of friendship and the depth of what's required. I was talking to Jan recently about the little episodic moments that I would meet Dave. Over the last couple of years, we share the same apartment building. And on a Tuesday or Thursday, just before noon, occasionally I would run into Dave. Where was Dave going? He was on his way to the gym. He was going to be picked up by a van. So this is up until about 2 or 3 weeks before Dave passed away. And I would say, hi Dave, and he would recognize. Dave's eyesight started waning a long time ago. He would recognize my voice, and I think he probably recognized my shape. And so not the most recent time, but about 6 months ago, I was walking him out, the van arrived, and I was walking him out to the van, and Dave asked the following question from the depth of his heart and his love of me. He said, Chuck, what are you doing for exercise? To which I said, I'm walking you to your van. Dave was not a big guffaw laugher, but I did get a Mona Lisa smile. All the way from Halifax, just a wonderful high-impact educator, another disciple of David E. Hunt. From Halifax, Dr. Ardra Cole will say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mary, I read that poem to my every class every year. Yeah, with the questions. This is the first time that I entered this building without Dave being here. It was quite an emotional moment walking here knowing he wasn't going to be here. So in 1983, I left my job, had a yard sale to raise money for tuition, loaded my pickup, and left Nova Scotia to enter the master's program in applied psychology with a focus on teaching, where I met my advisor, Dave Hunt. That was 36 years ago. Uncertainty and beginner's jitters quickly gave way to excitement and comfort as I listened to this esteemed professor talk passionately about every person being a psychologist, teachers as theorists, the importance of beginning with ourselves. I settled into what I knew almost immediately was my home place. And there I stayed for 27 years, with only a 2-year hiatus, before returning to my birthplace, because it was time. And through the duration of that stay of 27 years was Dave, my teacher, my mentor, my colleague, my dear friend, and the person who, next to my parents, has had the most profound influence on me, on who I am as a person, a teacher, a mentor, a colleague, and a friend. When I was a student, he provided unfailing encouragement and support, not only of my work, but through so many personal tribulations. I remember sitting in his office one day during a particularly rough period of personal hardship, of which he was somehow obviously well aware. As he listened to my story, which he was so very good at, he reached into his pocket and he pulled out this brooch. "This was my mother's," he said, holding it out to me. "It's always been a symbol of comfort to me," he said. "It's time for me to pass it along. It is one of my most cherished possessions." Towards the end of my doctoral program, Dave started to prepare me for next steps. And that included inviting me to be part of the sacred, oh so sacred, Thursday group. And I see so many members of that Thursday group here today, and Dave would be so delighted. I think we all know how sacred that group was to Dave. And while I was mostly too shy to say much, or even think that I had much of value to say, that gesture of inclusion meant the world to me. Inclusion and advocacy. Everyone needs an advocate, as the saying goes, and Dave was certainly mine. He created so many spaces and opportunities for me in the early years of my academic career, including the most significant opportunity to move from an OISE field center where I was appointed back to applied psychology, where we worked side by side through many changes for the next 20 years. With neighboring offices, he continued to support, mentor, and look out for me, and I continued to learn and grow. Anyone who knows Dave is familiar with the 3 lines that were so foundational to his work. Everyone is like every other person in some way. Every person is like some other person in some way, and every person is like no other person in some way. And while Dave later revised those lines to promote self-awareness and connection, so how am I like every other person in some way, etc. And he liked to think of that first question as the most important one, because he was all about finding similarities, not difference, about making connection and finding ways of building relationship. But when I think of Dave, I focus on the last, because for me, Dave is like no other person. I'm grateful for all that I have learned from him. I am truly honored to have been so close to him. I will always cherish his memory and will continue to strive to embody the qualities that he so beautifully and humbly lived. we've already heard those. Acceptance, attentiveness, empathy, humility, letting go, openness, patience, playfulness, and most important, the centrality and vitality of relationship. Thank you, Dave, for all that you will always be and mean to me and so many other people. You've had such a huge impact on everyone you touch, and I will always love you and thank you for the beautiful person that you are in my heart. Thank you.
Thank you. OISE's own and Mount St. Vincent University's own Audrey Cole. How many of you were part of the Thursday group? Raise your hands. Look at this. So what was the Thursday group? The Thursday group was indefinable. It was a gathering of people to do what? Talk about ideas. Yeah, it was that, Mal. But it was this unstructured thing that took on depth because Dave he was a superb moderator, just kept asking those questions. And I remember one day, and was anybody there when he brought a friend by the name of Seymour Sarrazin into the room?
Yes.
Seymour happened to be hanging around, and this giant of 20th century psychology walked in. The Thursday group, he was about forming these groups, including the foolish things, a group of friendship. Michael Skolnick, how many played basketball over at the Markham Elementary School that Dave organized? Dennis was there, Mike? Don, did you, Mel, you played? Did you play? No. You didn't play? Well, we're short, we can still play. He brought together...
Too slow.
Too slow. I resemble that. He brought together a group of about 12 guys, and we had the impression that we were doing full court back and forth. It was an elementary school gym, which was half the size of this now. He brought people together. And now we're going to hear from another one of his mentees. We're going to hear his voice. You will all recognize his voice. And Suriana, would you roll tape, as we say in the business? Anybody ever hear of Ed O'Sullivan? He used to not have the oath, but he does now. Roll tape. This might take a few hours, as you might say.
Hi, everybody. This is Ed O'Sullivan. You probably already mentioned my name. I'm very sorry that I'm not here for the celebration of Dave's life, who's been such a long-term friend of mine. The fact of the matter is that Dave and I have known each other for 61 years. Quite a long time, I can say that. And what a wonderful friendship. Let me by starting out to say that I first actually met Dave in 1966 when I started a program at Syracuse University in developmental psychology. He was the first professor whose seminar I presented at Syracuse. He was teaching a course in personality development out of his book Conceptual Systems, which was very highly regarded at the time. Subsequent to taking his class, ultimately, and because of his really positive way of dealing with students, I did my master's and my doctoral thesis under Dave's supervision. When I finished, Dave wrote a letter for me to the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, and I came to Toronto in 1966, and became a member of the Ontario Institute, a really excellent place to spend the rest of my days with it. At any rate, Dave was still back in Syracuse, but we had a distinguished professor by the name of David Osterveld, who actually decided to leave in 1969. And the director asked me, did I know of anybody who could actually replace David Osterveld? So I charged myself, I think, one of my great establishments that I think all would agree, is that I brought Dave Hunt to the Institute. At any rate, I'm sorry, I brought him to the Institute, and he came here, checking it out, and loved Toronto, and subsequently established his position in the University of Toronto as full professor and distinguished professor. When he was here, Dave and I actually taught a seminar course for the first year students in educational psychology, and we did this for 4 years. Ultimately, we wrote a book together called Between Psychology and Education, where I must say, when I look back in my first seeing Dave in Syracuse, I couldn't imagine myself at that time thinking that I would be actually teaching and writing a book with my mentor. It was a wonderful experience all the way through, as it is all of the time that I've known him here. At any rate, what I would like to do is, indicate, in a way, some sense of Dave. Many other people here, I'm sure, have so much to say about him, so I'll only mention a few things, and some things that are very important to me. Dave was, an extremely devoted student, devoted to his students, and provided a wonderful working atmosphere, both in the classroom and also in his dissertation directions and the seminars that he wrote. I have to say, as a personality, Dave had a kind of quiet dignity and a sense of humor at the same time, but always kind of at a lower key. At any rate, one of the most important things about Dave, in terms of me and other people, was his ability to be a deep and abiding friend. Dave, toward the end of his academic career, and he wrote many, many books subsequent to the one that we did together at the first part of his work in the Institute, but wrote many, many books subsequent to that. But the book I'm referring to is actually the one he wrote on friendship toward the end of his academic career. And what was the thing about the friendship part is that truly Dave knew how to be a friend. He actually always kept in touch with me in periods where I was not I was in some low periods in my life, and Dave was always in contact with me. He also had this kind of ability to care for others. He called me many times to ask how Jack Porter was doing when he's in his 90s at this point and caring for people outside. The thing about Dave is that, in fact, 3 days before he died, he called me to see how, I was doing and things like this. And I kept the phone call for a month or two, just listening to it because of my sense of, 2 days later from the call, he had passed away. I want to, also recognize the wonderful partner of his, Jan. We used to get together an awful lot at the beginning with John Weiser and Ann Weiser and Pat, my first wife. I really hope that you're doing well, Jan. Thank you very, very much, people. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Dave worrying about Ed's health, about Jack's health, everybody else's health. Here's a note from his baby brother. His baby brother Joe, 80 years old. That's why he's baby brother. My brother David Hunt was born 13 years before me. He was always supportive, encouraging, and he set an example for me, not only of excellence in education, but of courage, patriotism, and family devotion. Dave served in Germany during World War II. Yeah. I heard a little bit, oh really? Infantry lineman, a machine gunner. He seldom talked about this part of his life, but he received the Purple Heart Medal. Do you know that, Arjun? Yeah. You did know that, yeah.
I served with Pat.
Yes.
I know Mr. Patton's first name. I saw the movie. When I was young, David encouraged my interest in music and was the reason I became interested in it in the first place. My music thus became a successful career thanks to him. I cannot remember David ever giving me criticism for my many missteps in life, but he was always there to share my successes. I was very fortunate to have such an older brother. He had many friends because of his engaging nature. He was fun, he was interesting to be with. His interest in the saxophone brought special musical friendships. What he lacked in technique, a little bit on the basketball court as well. What he lacked in technique was made up for his remarkable spirit. I think the name of his band was Foolish Things, which is derived from one of his favorite songs, These Foolish Things. I miss him greatly, but his memory is a solace for me. Sometimes when things don't go well, I think of how he might have managed the same situation. It helps me cope. Rest in peace, my brother. Joe has been a professional drummer in Boston. So that's what he did. He was a professional jazz drummer. Now, you've all been waiting for These Foolish Things, or Foolish Things, and I'm going to introduce the current band leader. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Maybe Don will take over. There's rumors that Marcelo wants to usurp your role. So Mel is going to introduce some songs, and we're going to have a musical tribute to I'm trying. Okay. Mel then.
All the good stuff has been said, and I just want to mention that this is a return engagement for me, because that fantastic party for Dave's retirement, I played piano with his saxophone instructor and a very good bass player. And the fact was we had never seen each other before. But nobody knew this, not even the manager of Parkhouse. So we can't do worse than that. We're just going to do a few. I was going to say, I thought, well, I'll do some of Dave's favorite tunes, but we'd have to just be here all night because he had a lot of favorite tunes. We're just going to pick a few landmark ones. And Don actually Don and Dave were the original members of the old OISE band, and they started it from there. I came along a little later and continued on a little after. Now what's left now are the three of us, with the last one standing. And I'm not going to be standing for long, just one. I'm going to use my teacher voice for a moment. We start off with where things were many years ago when we were going through this little exercise with the University of Toronto. And the song that was our theme song was Here to Stay. Love is here to stay. What's first? All set?
Our love is here to stay.
Our love is here to stay. The love part's important too, of course. both had eyesight issues, and they got together that way. So we owe Dave for Jay's being with us now. Next one is the theme song, which, or at least the one that we're going to use, which is Foolish Things. Okay. We never rehearsed. It is our sort of last tribute today. We had to choose between that and Back Home and In the End, and I thought this would be more appropriate. Okay.
So every Wednesday night, Nexus Lounge, try the deal. The foolish things. And just an anecdote about Don Rizal. At age 40, up until age 40, he was a professional trumpeter, he was a professional musician. And at age 40, he decided he was going to get his doctorate in education. The movie will be out next spring. It's quite a story. It's a true story. Thank you, Silver Lips. He's up. We're going to hear from two more people. And then we're going to just have a little bit of fellowship and friendship the way Dave would want us to engage in. There's a scrapbook back there near the food table. And it's a scrapbook that Dave has, and leaf through it, and it's just remarkable. And Jen, I'll bring that across the street so that you can have that. Jan will have the last word, or I may have the last syllable or two about the David E. Hunt Award. But now let's hear from the man himself. So about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when OISE under Dean Glenn Jones's leadership was celebrating our 50th anniversary, we decided that we would interview some of the founding scholars. Bob Jackson, the founder of OISE, had this notion that the best way to put OISE on the map is to have people on the map, already on the map, to come to this place. And so we did several interviews. Where's David Olson? David, are you here still? So David Olson was one, and let's hear from the man himself. And it's not David Olson.
And I came because it was a wonderful opportunity. William Davis.
No.
Here we are.
No.
Yep.
And I came because it was a wonderful opportunity. William Davis's experiment here was a unique opportunity, the only one in the world, bringing together the three things of a graduate school of education, a research development unit, and field centers outside Ontario. It was amazing. And I was interested in doing work which was applied. I could get into the work. And in the States, the split between psychology and education was such that it was a little difficult to do. About my own opportunity, this has been a wonderful opportunity. And I have to say that in terms of my own experience here, the most important thing came about as I went through the 70s and the 80s. In the 70s, we thought theory was everything. I had a theory about matching. It was a big deal for the days of learning style. And I worked out with schools and so forth. And I remember hearing and talking to a teacher who was had the guts to talk to me honestly. And the teacher said, you have a theory about how kids learn different ways, and I already knew about that. And what I understood, and I made a remarkable understanding, is that the most important thing that happened to me in my work at the Institute over 47 years. And that was the notion that practitioners know a great deal, and often a lot more than we do. I initiated a course called Practitioner Experience Knowledge, which was enormously important. Taught it 4 times a year. It was always full. And the idea was I would give these opportunities, not only teachers, but nurses, social workers, practitioners of all kinds. Give them the opportunity to bring out their own theory, their own understanding, their own worthwhileness, share it with each other. And that was a powerful experience. And as you know, it led to my books of beginning ourselves and so forth, but it was an amazing opportunity for me, and I'll never forget it. It was an interesting group, and in the early 80s, I met Don Misella at it was a party for someone here, and I had not known Don before, but we got together and played. He was just a marvelous trumpeter, and I was just learning how. So anyway, we began, the two of us, and then we brought Malcolm Levin in, and we began playing here in the Institute, and then we got a gig across the street at the Big Old Beagle, and gave it the name of the Foolish Things. We got Hugh Oliver to sing for us. Howard was one of our alto players. We had a great time, a lot of fun, and it's amazing we are in 50 years later. And I hope I can continue with the same opportunities, I say, for creativity, innovation, and responsibility.
David Hunt. Jan?
You can move that microphone around.
Yeah. And I'll put this, how do you want to do this?
I'll just sit down.
There you go. And we'll arrange this. Anybody who wants that, that interview, just send us a note. Send it over.
That feels better.
Yeah. There you go.
Now, can people hear me? I guess so.
Yeah, that's,
Oh. Thanks. Thank you, Charles. Well, I have a lot of people to thank. Dean Jones, Chuck Pascal, Don Musella, Malcolm Levin, Jay, the Foolish Things, of course, Suriana, Sim Kapoor, and Mary and Ardra. What lovely tributes. I think David would just be beaming up there. You know? Now, you've been hearing about David as a colleague and friend, so I thought I would just say a few words about David the person who was my husband. We were married for over 50 years. During that time, we learned from one another and both changed. I think for the better. I was certainly never bored. Just a few things about David that make me smile to remember. He was a fine swimmer who worked as a lifeguard during school breaks. He could bask in the sun for hours, loved sunbathing. We must have been an odd couple on a Caribbean beach. He in his swim trunks and I covered from head to toe. And guess who got sunburned? I don't know how it got there. Before his eyesight worsened, he was a good driver who loved to drive. Oh, he had a little sporty yellow car and he just beetle around in it. In later years, when we played golf, about 50% of his pleasure in the game was driving the golf cart at speed, rounding corners on two wheels. It was hair-raising. He enjoyed some cooking, grilling outdoors, doing a fine chicken and rice, and very rare steaks. That is raw with a little blistering on the outside. He enjoyed recorded literatures. Mysteries like Philip MacDonald's were his favorites. He wrote haiku, and they were very sexy, charming, and romantic. And lastly, he enjoyed organizing
reorganizing and treasuring books, photos, music, notes, correspondence, a sort of collage of his life. I won't go on, but I did want to mention some additional things that made David interesting. And I do thank you.
Okay, friends, that's it for the moment. Dave will always be in our hearts and minds. The impact through testimony and music is obvious. Please break bread with us. Have a look at that wonderful scrapbook of memories. And thank you for thanking Sim and, sorry? Oh yes, I'm just about to mention that. Sim Kapoor, I have three of my bosses here. I have my department chair, the dean, and Sim, who's the director of advancement and external affairs. So first of all, I want to thank, regarding the David E. Hunt Graduate Excellence in Teaching Award, the dean and Sim have decided to augment what that prize means for the successful award winner each year. And so there's pledge cards just outside that you can fill out. And I'm pleased to say that the first pledge is an extremely generous one from Jan and the family. So we thank you for that, and the Institute is very grateful. And again, it adds to everything we stand for in terms of excellence in graduate research, scholarship, and teaching. So thanks, Jan, to you and the family. And again, I want to reinforce what Jan said. Thanks to the remarkable leadership, naturally Glenn, but for events like this, Sim and her team with Suriana, Marianne on camera number 1, Marianne on camera number 2. Natalie's here, and also want to thank Denise from Glenn's office, who, this is all hands on deck when these things happen. And lots of support from lots of people. So thank you all for being here. Stay here, mingle a bit. You can all go and see Microphone, who's just shown up in the place where he used to work as well. Thanks for coming.